James, welcome to the Inside GITEX podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Tiring, but very rewarding.
Have you walked a lot around GITEX?
Well, I haven't so much myself because we got meeting rooms right next to our stand.
Okay.
But one of my colleagues said he walked 14 kilometers
Look,
yesterday.
it's a phenomenal way to get your steps in. I'm not going to lie. It's great. And right now we're in a fishbowl. You okay with being in a fishbowl?
I'm fine. Everyone's just staring, pushing their faces against the window. It's
They all want a piece of the Dubai Internet City podcast. I love that. James, you're the VP of Global Security and you advise on strategy as well for Cohesity. Talk to me about what Cohesity is all about and also the role that you have there.
Yeah, so Cohesity fundamentally does three things. I mean, our origins are in data resilience. So if you go back to the days of disaster recovery and business continuity, our founders are the people that originally built the file system that Google's based on. And then when they left Google, they went, why don't we open that up to the masses? So they built this massive hyperscaler file system and they went, what's a really good use for that? Backup and recovery. So they built this over 10 years ago.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden the world changed. 2016, the rise of ransomware. So the biggest driver for backup and recovery became ransomware. But you can't just recover then. You've got to investigate incidents. You've got to eradicate the threats before you recover. So we then added a bunch of cybersecurity capabilities on top of the platform.
So what's the difference between ransomware and malware?
So ransomware can use malware, or it might not these days. So malware is basically malicious software.
Okay.
But what we're starting to see is a trend towards not using that at all. So what you've got is ransomware actors are actually living off the land. So they are using your IT tooling against you yourself. So I've actually seen backup solutions being used as a data exfiltration mechanism. Why pivot for 1,000 machines when you go to one backup server, recover the data from 1,000 machines to one place and exfiltrate it from there? And also identity-based attacks. So they're stealing people's accounts using legitimate access to get in, deploy the ransomware.
So help me in a ranking sort of perspective. What's the one that has most critical mass where your business is really geared towards?
So I think the biggest challenge at the moment is vulnerabilities. So if we go back 2-3 years, it was phishing. Like everyone would send a malicious link or they would attach a binary malware, which would cause the attack. These days, they're just targeting vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And a third of all ransomware attacks are getting in that way. And we all know we can't patch fast enough, and they're weaponizing them in 24 hours.
They're getting really good, aren't they?
They are getting exceptionally
They're getting
good.
smarter and smarter, and it's becoming harder and harder to detect. Is that fair?
Much harder to detect because, like I say, living off the land, using legitimate accounts.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but a lot of solutions here, I'm looking at their logos saying we stop ransomware. And our company have dealt with hundreds of ransomware incidents in which some of those logos are in use in those customers. The reality is you can't stop it these days.
So if you were going to explain in layman's terms, right, in everyday kind of use, cyber resiliency, how would you do that?
So it's a term that's bandied around a lot, and I've seen it on a lot of banners in here. I think the first thing is to realize it's not technology. You can't buy cyber resilience. Cyber resilience is an emerging property. It's something you become by doing the right things with the right technology.
So it's more strategy than it is product.
It's strategy to achieve it, and then it's operations, and you need strategy to achieve those operations and then keep them on track with the way your business changes or the adversary changes behavior.
So if someone's packaging cyber resiliency, should we have a bit of a question mark on that?
Exactly. And I say that, and I work for a vendor, and it's customers say it's refreshing when you work for a vendor and you've got someone who's an ops guy who's spent 3 decades in incident response, and I'm saying it's not all about our technology.
Yeah.
That's a foundation, but you've got to do the right thing with it.
Look, it's been 4 or 5 minutes. We haven't mentioned AI yet, so I'm going to drop it in now. So let's throw AI into the mix, okay? What kind of cyber threats is going to start to emerge with the advent of agents? And what's going to change?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of threats related to AI. I think agents are not the top one.
People
right?
creating agents in order to bypass the security, initiatives.
If we look at how AI is impacting cyber resilience, right, the major things are kind of threefold. The first one is, I mentioned the weaponization of vulnerabilities. Well, that's happening in 24 hours now because they're using AI-powered reverse engineering tools to look at the patches Microsoft released on Patch Tuesday, and then by a day they've weaponized them into ransomware as a service platforms because they're using
That's what I'm saying. So AI now is being used more and more in a way which is going to make your job even more complex.
Exactly.
So how do you stay ahead of that?
So, well, you just build better cyber resiliency, right? Because you can't stay ahead of it. Okay. And that's the thing. No one can patch infrastructure in a day. Yeah. It's just impossible.
So is the world going to get more safe or less safe?
I think initially less safe. And as long as people take a reasoned approach to resiliency, not buying silver bullet products, but doing the right things with them, then it will become safer. And regulations like DORA, PRA, NIS2 in Europe, they're driving a focus on response and recovery, not just pretending we can stop these attacks. And I think that's a welcome approach.
So we're talking a lot about the enterprise approach, but what about sovereign approach? How involved are you as a business, and what changes when you start to bring in countries rather than just companies when it comes to cybersecurity?
Well, I think, I dealt with one of the largest incidents in this region by a nation state. So it's against an oil company in the region.
I can guess the country.
I can't talk about my ex-customers.
It's okay, but I can guess the country.
Yes, you can probably guess who it was. And that's rising, right? Geopolitical instability. If you look at the two biggest users of wiper attacks, you've got Iran and Russia, both of which are kind of embroiled in existential crises at the moment, and we're seeing them kind of lash out from a cyber perspective. And then we've got North Korea, whose major economy is funded by cryptocurrency exchange theft. So we've got all these interesting relationships as well between nation states and ransomware operators. They're kind of nurturing, which is another factor.
And it's not a one size fits all. I mean, you have different problems in different markets and approaches. But if you could give one piece of advice to whether they're sovereign leaders or, business leaders, what is that advice when it comes to getting themselves to really be resilient in the cyberspace?
I think the most important thing is don't try and go from zero to hero overnight. I've run transformations for very large organizations over the years. And, people that build this Prince 2 5-year program, critical path, work packages, work items. It's like, no, assess where you are now, baseline where you are, look at your weakest link, focus on that. Then when that has got one notch higher, focus on your next weakest link. Don't take one area and go to 5, right? Because by the time you get to the end of that program, lots of things are a dumpster fire. Yeah. And after 3 or 4 years, the threats moved on, the way you deliver IT has moved on. Continual improvement, pragmatically, has been much more effective in building resilience, in my experience.
That's a brilliant, beautiful insight. How long have you been in this industry in total?
So I started off in defense and intelligence. So it's a very similar problem. Collect a lot of data, analyze that data, make determinations. So building SOCs was very similar. So back 35 years, so I have no hair.
But by the way, I have to say, you're probably one of the best dressed, if not the best dressed guest I've had on Inside Jitech. So congratulations. And also the content is pretty brilliant as well. So thank you for that. Across those 35 years, then experience that you have, what is that overriding insight that you would like to bring to light?
I don't know. I think I had an epiphany because I spent 10 years building SOCs. So I built 91 security operations centers, my team around the world, including a lot in this region, for some of the largest logos in the world. And, I was all about, if you detect it early enough, if you build robust protections, we can stop it. And then I got to about 2018, and I started talking much more about effective response and recovery and resilience, because you can't stop it. I mean, that's the number one takeaway I've got is, and that's my major piece of advice, is if you think by going and buying any one of these products or hundreds of these products, because I've gone in as an incident responder to orgs that have 140 top right Gartner quadrant products, and they've still had an incident.
Yeah.
And my ex-employer, we spent $1 billion a year on cybersecurity.
Wow.
And we still had an incident where we lost 50 million records.
Wow.
You just can't stop
Yeah.
it.
Look, I love that honesty. I love the insight and the approach. Obviously, welcome to GITEX. What are your expectations for the next few days?
That it will continue to be just as manic, exciting, and tiring as it has been for the last 2 days. So.
Look, next year potentially bring some comfortable shoes. There'll be a lot of walking at Expo next year. But look, James, it's been a real pleasure having you on. Thank you for being part of the Inside GITEX podcast, and I sincerely wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much.